Well, welcome, guys. I appreciate you all being here today. I know there's a lot of different things you could be doing with your Tuesday afternoon, so I do appreciate you spending a few minutes with us today. My name is Matthew Otero, and I am the Senior Director of Data with tnAchieves. I'll be the person kind of presenting the statewide and then local data revolving around Robertson County for you guys. Just to give you a little bit of background, we are doing these all this week. In total, we're doing 91 of these webinars, one for like a statewide one, and then one for each individual county that we are working in. And so because we serve Robertson County and its students, we want to provide an update on how those students are doing. The reason we also do these local advisory council meetings is because in 2015, when legislation passed for Tennessee Promise, it was expected that the county mayor would create kind of a group that would then provide guidance, feedback, and just kind of a layer of accountability. And so we take that, very strongly and want to make sure that you have a good understanding of how your particular community is doing when it comes to promise and then kind of access and college retention rates. You guys will notice when you jumped on that your microphones were unmuted and your videos, you have your video feature as well. This can be as conversational as you would like. So at any point, if you have any questions, definitely raise your hand or feel free to interrupt me, and I'll do my best to answer those questions. And then I'll ask again, obviously, at the end of the meeting as well. We used to do these in person, but obviously with the past year and a half, makes it not as possible to do that. But with the power of Zoom, we're able to invite you guys, obviously, but we obviously invited pretty much anybody that had an interested party or interested in our organization for the past few years. So people might be hopping on, but we do appreciate you guys being here, and we'll go ahead and jump into it. So as a quick review, tnAchieves is a privately funded organization that's a 501c3 nonprofit. We serve 90 of the 95 counties in Tennessee. That simply means that we're the partnering organization for the Tennessee Promise Scholarship. We are in charge of the program requirements, making sure that they understand exactly what needs to be done, all the communication, and then we also are responsible for recruiting all the mentors the students will work with. So since we started, we've worked with over 440,000 students from each cohort in total, and we've recruited over 71,000 volunteers. And then annually, we work with over 600 high schools, as well as 67 eligible post-secondary institutions. So you'll see that map. It shows everywhere that we work in. Robertson County is the county we've been in since Tennessee Promise started. Those few gray counties are counties that also participate in Tennessee Promise, but they are with the AIRS Foundation. So I just want to point that out. Okay, so this slide right here kind of dives into what exactly is the work that tnAchieves is doing. So the first three things that you'll see, the Tennessee Promise logo, the little people on the bench, and the little shovel guy, those all represent kind of our three big components of Tennessee Promise and tnAchieves. So one is the last dollar scholarship. That's the big carrot that students and parents see when they apply for Tennessee Promise. Before, when we were a private organization, we would raise the funding to pay for that. But since Tennessee Promise came into effect, the state is our partner in that sense, and they handle all the financial aspects of the last dollar scholarship. And that means that it can be used any of the 27 TCATs across the state, any of the 13 community colleges, as well as any of the 27 four-year universities that are eligible post-secondary institutions. The other two big pillars that have always been part of the tnAchieves kind of plan is the volunteer mentor and the community service requirement. So as I mentioned before, tnAchieves is responsible for recruiting the mentors in each county it works in. And the reason why we do that is because every student that applies for Tennessee Promise is then paired up with a student and a mentor. So that basically means that the student will have a resource and an encourager that they can turn to throughout their transition from high school to college to hopefully help them make the best decision that they can make for whatever their future is post high school graduation. We'll go into that a little bit more about what mentor looks like and how that can be helpful, especially from you guys. But I will address kind of the community service component. We've always requested students submit 8 or more hours so that they can kind of essentially give back to their community. And so we'll dive into that a little bit more as well. But community service is something that is a big pillar of our organization and something that we still do to this day. This past year was a little bit more difficult, obviously with COVID as well, but these are the things that have never really changed in our organization. The two bottom things, the sun and the little person at the desk, those are some of our newer initiatives, and they tie in directly with our goal of improving college retention. So before, those previous pillars were related a lot to college access, but we know that getting to students to a campus is not just job done. Instead, it's getting them there and then helping them be successful so that they can eventually graduate with a credential of their own. And so some of the initiatives that we have now in place are the summer programs, which involve the Summer Bridge program and the Summer Institute. And then we also have the Complete program that has launched now for a couple of years. The Summer Bridge program is something that's like a 3-week academic boot camp that allows students that would otherwise have to start in learning support classes get the chance to study in English, math, and reading, and have the chance to either improve or test out of those learning support classes. So it gives them a chance to not only get used to a campus, but it also allows them to hopefully test out of classes that would maybe otherwise keep them a semester behind. This past year, for instance, we were at all 13 community colleges across the state, and 89% of our students had a success rate. So that meant that they either improved or they, tested out of their Summer Bridge program and their learning support classes. So that's a really big success for us. The other one is the Summer Institute. Our ultimate goal with this is to have it expand to kind of more of a statewide program, but it's currently housed in Memphis, and we focus on kind of the urban core of Memphis with students that are otherwise kind of underserved or more at risk. 100% of our students that are in that program are a minority, and 85% come from a low-income household. And this past year, we had 29 of them, and they were all successful in their achievement of the program. The program's a little bit longer, it's 6 weeks long, but it allows them to not only test out of the learning support classes, but then also allows them to test out of or earn up to 9 credit hours before they even start campus. So something that we're really proud of is 100% success rate. So these are things that we're trying to focus on during the summertime. The Complete program, which you'll see there as well, that is a program where we are basically coaching every student that fits into the Complete program that essentially is kind of coming from a low-income background. These are the students that we have seen that regardless of what other sort of aid may be available, that financial issues can be the biggest cause of why a student doesn't continue to go to school or finish. And so with the Complete program, they get assigned to a coach in their area. So in Robertson County, I believe all the students are currently attached to Galilea, who's on our staff. And she works with them, checks in with them monthly, making sure that if they have questions, they have somebody they can turn to. They essentially kind of fill in that role of what the mentor was doing for the student while they were still in high school. This is a program we're really excited about. Like I said, it is statewide. And so we'll have some numbers there as well that kind of show the successes related to that. We keep moving forward though, we kind of step back and see kind of again what the statewide numbers look like. So I kind of talked about all the counties that we work in, but you'll see that in almost 3/4 or a little less than 3/4 of the counties that we serve in are considered rural counties, and then 35 of them are considered at risk or distressed as defined by the Tennessee Department of Economic and Community Development. In the bottom line, you'll see kind of where the Tennessee Promise students are actually enrolling. So of those 67 eligible institutions, we're seeing about 80% are going to a community college. So in most cases in Robertson County, that's probably going to be Ball State. And then about the other 20% are being split up between a TCAT and a four-year university. Once again, this is just for Tennessee Promise students, so it's something to keep note. But I know specifically with Volunteer State as well that there is the TCAT right there in Springfield as well. So those numbers may be a little bit off compared to these numbers are obviously skewed a little bit by the major cities across the state where these are where we traditionally see kind of that breakdown. We dive in a little bit further and you can see kind of more in depth what we're working with. And so annually, tnAchieves is working with over 60,000 students with each cohort. A couple of years ago, we had our highest number of applicants, which was 64,000. And of those typically that apply, they make up about 89% of all Tennessee Promise students, or all high school seniors, excuse me. So that means basically out of 9 out of 10 seniors across the state in those 90 counties are applying for Tennessee Promise and then actually being put into the tnAchieves program. So that means that when they're in the program, they're getting all the communication from us. They are getting the volunteer mentor. They are getting the opportunity for things like job shadowing and all that sort of thing that in a normal year is going and taking place. That second little bullet there, the 78%, is showing that 78% of all first-time full-time freshmen at one of the community colleges, which are Tennessee Promise eligible, are going through the tnAchieves process. So almost 8 out of 10 students at the community college level are going and being in the tnAchieves program since they apply for Tennessee Promise. And then that last little bullet of 86% is just showing that of the graduates from a Tennessee community college, 86% of them have gone through the tnAchieves program. So it's kind of, a symbiotic relationship here between us and the community colleges. If we're succeeding, then we know that the community colleges are succeeding and vice versa. That middle line is going to just kind of be some fun facts there that over half of the students that actually apply for Tennessee Promise that work with tnAchieves are going to qualify for federal financial aid. So that means that when they submit their FAFSA form, which is a requirement of Tennessee Promise, over half of them are going to receive some sort of Pell funding. That may be a full Pell grant, it may be some Pell grant, but they are receiving that particular type of aid. The 40% for the first generation college students is self-reported, but that's what students are reflecting when they apply. So I would take that one with a little bit of grain of salt, but we like to kind of just point that out that that's how these students are identifying. And then 51% of them actually end up majoring in either a health science or a STEM related field. And that number is really important because we know across the state with the drive to 55 that the state's trying to recruit different employers to the state. And a lot of times the jobs that are coming are going to be tied to either the STEM or the health related field, especially with like nursing. We've seen a big boost in that in the past year and a half. So the fact that students are pursuing that means that they are hopefully going to end up getting a credential that will help them sustain for their lives as they move forward and forward after college graduation. The bottom line is thus also just the cost of Tennessee Promise and then what tnAchieves cost is to operate. So annually, the state is paying around $32 million to fund the Tennessee Promise Scholarship. That again is through all 95 counties of the state. And the $2.5 million budget is what tnAchieves operates on. That has about 30 staff members. And that is also pretty much all privately fundraised, minus a little bit from the state for our complete program. At that point, does anybody have any questions I can help answer before we dive into Robertson County's particular information? Okay, perfect. So what you'll see on your screen right now is going to be your FAFSA filing rate for Robertson County, as well as your community service hours to the state. So if we look at the FAFSA filing rate, we'll see for this past year, statewide, we were about 86%. Still, that's leading the nation, but it is a little bit down from the previous year. We were at 90% the previous year. And so obviously there's a multitude of reasons why that may be the case, but most likely it is because of COVID. And if we look at Robertson County, you're just below that 86% mark as well. And so that number probably also did go down. And we just know that last year was crazy, especially for students going to school. Some were in person, some were virtual. They didn't necessarily have the high school counselor consistently there to try to push them or just be around that school environment. And so that's something that we're trying to address and trying to kind of boost moving forward with this upcoming year. The community service numbers, like I said, this has been a pillar of ours since we started. And so in the times that Robertson County has been a partnering county with us, there's been almost 32,000 hours that the students have given back. And so hopefully you've either seen some of that, or if you're watching this video later on, you've been the recipient of some of those community service hours if you run a nonprofit or an organization in Robertson County. But one number we're really proud of is statewide, we're just under 3.4 million community service hours, which kind of makes us the largest community service organization in the state, at least according to our chairman, Randy Boyd. So I don't know if that's completely true, but it's something we kind of run with internally because it is a really big number and something that we really do take a lot of pride in. If we continue to look at Robertson County, this is going to show us kind of the student progress for a particular cohort. So this is looking at the class of 2019, and it's compared with the statewide numbers for 2019. If we look at that bottom row, the 3-year graduation rate is instead going to look at the class of 2017. So I just want to point that out to everyone. But if we look, you can kind of see how many applicants there were for each county, for that county, as well as statewide, how many end up actually enrolling at an eligible institution, and we're still Tennessee Promise eligible. And then the first year retention rate. As I mentioned at the beginning, we are focusing a lot of our attention now on retention because we know that's the next big step. We need to get these students not only to school, but to get them to graduate with a credential. And so if we look at Robertson County students from the class of 19, they're just a little bit below the state average, only by a few percentage points. So that's something that we're working on, not only in Robertson County, but across the state. And then we look at the 3-year graduation rate, though, Robertson County is actually exceeding the statewide number by about 6%. And so that's awesome to see, that's awesome to hear, but we know that those numbers are not where we want to be. You'll see on the next slide that, we don't want to celebrate 35% statewide. We don't want to celebrate 41%. We want every student that does actually end up going to school to eventually graduate and finish. Rather, their Tennessee Promise or not. And so if we dive into that next page, it's going to show, again, kind of a step out and look at the statewide numbers. And so the gray boxes you'll see are looking at just full-time freshmen, first-time freshmen at a community college. So these can be some promise students or non-promise students. It's just looking at all of them. Whereas the green is going to look at students that particularly have gone through the tnAchieves program. So that 67% number is going to show you what we saw on the previous page of the first year retention rate of students that have gone to an eligible institution. And so if we compare that with just the regular student at a community college, it's 14% higher, which is great. And then if we kind of step back even further, that 74% number is going to look at any student that applied for Tennessee Promise, but ended up going to any school. So they may have used Promise, or they may have maybe gone out of state. They may have gone to Tennessee Tech or a school in Nashville or out of state. And they may have not been Promise eligible, but they did apply, they went to the program, and then now they're still pursuing a college degree somewhere. The bottom numbers then look at this graduation rate for 6 years. And so that's where that 35% number is coming into play. It's not necessarily, like I said, something that we hang our hat on, but we are at 51% when we look at just tnAchieves students at community colleges, and when we compare it to just the first-time full-time freshmen at a community college. So these are numbers we're still trying to improve on, and we're doing it through different initiatives. And so that's where that box on the right then comes into play. I've talked about 2 of these already, the summer programs, which incorporate the Summer Bridge program and the Summer Institute, and then our Complete program, which is kind of the hands-on support for those students that are kind of from a low-income background and more at risk. But the one I haven't talked about is Knox Promise. This is a pilot program that's currently going on in Knox County. Through private funding. It is very similar to the Complete program, but instead of it being capped at a certain kind of income, any student from Knox County is then paired up with a coach. And so regardless of income, they have a coach that's checking in with them on a regular basis, making sure that they know how to handle all of what's coming with transition and then when they're in college. But they also have the added bonus of what's called kind of a completion grant. And these completion grants are for those that are from kind of the lower income background, where they can request funding for things that come with going to school that aren't necessarily tuition. So for students that maybe have some food insecurities or transportation issues, books and materials, costs like that that may inhibit them from going to school, they have the ability to request these completion grants, or also known as emergency funding. And if approved, they can receive that funding immediately and then hopefully try to help avoid whatever that challenge, that speed bump may be, from them continuing to pursue school that semester. As I said, this is still only in Knox County, but we are actively pursuing to try to get this to be a statewide program. We currently received a little bit of funding, and it just released yesterday. So we did reach out to some Robertson County students that fit that sort of mold with low income background. And if they receive that email, they can immediately start applying for that funding. And so we're in the process of doing that, but it's not a guarantee from year to year. And so we are working on trying to get that to be a year-to-year program, because we know that the cost of going to school goes beyond just the tuition. But both of those programs, or all 3 of those programs, are showing positive results, with each showing an increase in the retention rate for those particular cohorts of students when compared to just the normal group of students. All right, taking another step back now is looking at the college going rate for the state of Tennessee. So most of the numbers here have been very positive, especially that graduation rate for Robertson County. But we know that sometimes there's not great things, and we want to be transparent about that. And so the college going rate had increased greatly if you look at from 2014 to 2015. That so happened to coincide with Tennessee Promise being approved, where the college going rate jumped by 4.6%, which was more than the previous 7 years combined. It then kind of leveled out between 62 and 64% for the next 5 years. But as you know, with 2020 and COVID happening, we did see a drop. It dropped, a decent amount, down to just under 57%. And then if we look at Robertson County, also there was a big drop from that class of 2020, almost 10% of the college going rate there. And so although that's not something that, is great, we also kind of have an understanding of why that may have happened, just because of how crazy a school year it was last year. And so we started thinking, okay, what can we ask our local advisor councils that, what's the biggest thing that they can help us do to try to make sure that we can level those numbers back up? And it all revolves back to our mentors. When we work with over 60,000 students and then an additional 30 or so thousand students while they're in college, we just can't have that hands-on touch with them that we would want to. But that's where the mentors come into place. And so as a local advisory council, we want to just kind of spread the news on, what it is to be a mentor and see if we can find people to mentor in Robertson County. As a quick refresher, the role of the mentors have not changed. We're still asking them to be a task manager. So essentially reminding students, hey, you have this deadline coming up, or did you know that you need to do this to apply to the school? Things of that nature that is just kind of, layering on what tnAchieves is already sending them. The other role is being a resource, being somebody that they can turn to if they have a question or if their family has a question. We don't expect the mentors to know everything, but we ask them that, if they can be that person that connects the student with us, they're doing their job perfectly. And then the last is the encourager. I think with the past year and a half, we could all use a personal encourager, but especially for these students who pretty much went virtual for their whole junior year, and then now with their senior year, who knows what that's going to look like. Having somebody that can just continue to remind them that this can be an option for them if they so choose, and kind of just support them with whatever, whenever they may feel or doubt themselves. That's all that we're really asking. The process to mentor is going to be very much the same. They'll still be able to call, text, and email. We'll continue to do tnAchieves Connect for some of our mentors that I know have been mentoring in the past. That will be there still. So we'll still have that virtual option, and we're going to push students to that virtual option even harder this year, now that we have a better understanding of how it functions. But ultimately, we're going to try to keep it at around 12 hours still per year. But one of the things we will be doing is also offering kind of in-person open houses. So instead of the in-person meetings that we used to do, which is kind of funny to think about now, where we'd all be jam-packed into a gym, we're going to host open houses at the colleges. And it'll just give you an opportunity to reach out to your students and say, hey, if you'd like to meet in person, you can meet me here at this date, and we can talk and chat, as well as be able to talk to tnAchieves staff or the college staff. So this is an opportunity that's going to be available to you guys, as well as just being able to reach out and meet with your students on your own as well. We've never really encouraged that in the past, but a lot of mentors have asked about that. And so we feel like if you're able to go and be in a public place and you want to try to organize a group like that, by all means do that. Randy Boyd, who's our chairman, he does something like that where he gets everyone together for pizza. And so we just want mentors to know that there's going to be a lot of flexibility and a lot of options for them to do whatever it is they feel is their best way of mentoring students. So if we turn to our next slide, this is the number that we need in Robertson County, 113. Every year, I know that we get to that number with Robertson County, but we need help. And so as a local advisory council, just spreading the word about when the deadline is, understanding where they can go to apply, or just sharing your own sort of experience with it, that's all that we can truly ask for it. The application is going to be very similar to what it's been. If you're a returning mentor, it's going to be just a few questions, updating your information. And if you're a new mentor, it's going to be just maybe 4 or 5 minutes of information, and then you'll be in our system and you'll be geared to go. And so as a local advisory council, we would just ask you guys either to become a mentor yourself, which I know some of you are, or to spread the word. So if you are part of a group in your community, or you have a group of friends or family or at your workplace that would be interested in learning about this, let us know. You can email me, or you can reach out to the mentors team, where you'll see the email mentors@tnAchieves.org. And we'll do our best to either send you the communication that you've requested, so that way you can just send it out. Or if there's an opportunity to go talk in person, we would love that opportunity. We'll work with you to find the date and time, so that way we can help spread this word, because getting to 90,000 or 9,000, not 90, 9,000 mentors every year, it is difficult, but it's something that we always are able to accomplish, but only with the help of those in our community that see our need. So the last thing that we can also ask is just spreading the word about Tennessee Promise. A lot of people, I think, with it being so virtual and the way the school is working, aren't necessarily aware that Promise is already open for the class of 2022. But just by sharing that out, it lets students know that, hey, they can start applying and just get the process rolling with that. Most of the things that we do or that we ask with Tennessee Promise are not really different from what a student would be doing if they were going to plan on going to school anyways. And so they might as well just get the process rolling and keep this as a plan B, C, or D in their back pocket. But we're really concerned about that, because last year we didn't get a chance to be in front of the students, and we think that may have also played part of a role with how the numbers shaped out for the class of 2020. So with that being said, like I said, the application to apply for a mentor is December 3rd. The application, or the deadline to apply for Tennessee Promise, is going to be December 1st, or November 1st, I'm sorry. And so just spreading the word is all that we can ask. But at this time, is there any questions I can take from anybody? Susan, Lauren, anybody who's on the phone? I can help answer anything that didn't make sense.
I don't have any. Thank you for meeting with us today. And I've been a mentor for a few years, and I always feel like I don't do a whole lot. I'm not that helpful, but I do have students that will, ask me different questions and stuff. And so I'm glad that I'm able to be that person that can kind of help them out and answer those for them.
Yeah, of course. No, we appreciate you guys being here today, and we appreciate you mentoring. We know that sometimes it can feel that way, but know that oftentimes we see the most response from students like when they do start school, and they realize just like how much it was a team effort. Whether it was the mentor, it was their high school staff, it was their family, their friends. It's a collective effort to getting students to school and actually having them feel that confidence that they can be successful. So we couldn't do it without mentors like you, and we're glad to share this data with you guys. We usually do this every other year, and so we will continuously provide updates. But at any point, if you guys have questions, you have my contact information, and you can reach out at any time. Any questions, Susan, or anybody?
No, thank you so much for all that you're doing for our community. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem, guys. All right, well, I'll let you go. It's 1 minute before 1:30, so we made it on time. I hope you guys have a good rest of your afternoon, and we'll hopefully see you around soon.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, guys. Have a
Thank
great
you.
day.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.